set the table here. So you're a hockey player, and maybe you've looked at, maybe you're not the best guy on the team, but maybe you're average, and it's like it seems like there's a gap, and there is. Let's say there is. It's easy to get overwhelmed, and it's easy to maybe even work hard, but not sure what you're doing. But if you do it specifically, if you, like, I'll lay it out here in a second. If you do it specifically, then you can close these gaps big time. Okay. So what I mean by that is, again, look at something. I guess we'll use an equation, and I don't know if this is the right equation. It's not like EMC squared, but maybe it is. If you take time, right? So don't, like you said in that fight. It actually is different than the fight. You said go in the moment, but in the moment you can do something, but don't look at getting results immediately. Okay, and we've talked about this several different ways before. But what we want to do is you want to put time in to a deficiency, put some intelligent hard work into it, and over time, let's give yourself the 4 or 5 years, or 6 or 7 or 3 or 2, something like that, to fix a problem, right? And if you can do that with a couple different skill buckets, you've become a better hockey player. True? And one thing I would like to say is, to be clear about, is number one, not mindless training. And this is where I think a lot of the problems come in, is that people think that doing more, going on the ice, doing more, like let's say, Eric, you got bad hands, or you're whatever, there's a deficiency in your game somewhere, and just go and do more skill session, more ice, more ice, more ice, more ice. A lot of the times that doesn't work. And I'm going to use an example here. I know, and I beat up power skating a lot of the times. And the reason I'm not against it at all, but what I find a lot of times is someone says, yeah, I've been going to this power skating person. And I'm like, okay, cool, because I cannot tell. Right. And that's a way that you can try it, but then it's about being intelligent about it. What else can I do? Like, we're talking about fixing a gap. So instead of mindless training, be intent. And then the second part of this is, don't beat yourself while you're doing this. Beat yourself up while you're doing this, because it's a process, and it should and can be fun. Okay, if you do this in an intelligent way.
Yeah, can I cut you off?
Yeah, 100%.
So
turn my page anyways.
Yeah. So I want to touch on that, training mindlessly, because the reason it starts to be an issue is because when you start out training anything, it is mindless because you don't know anything, and because you're doing it mindlessly to start, you do get better. It's the newbie gains, right? If you never train in the weight room, you can start doing anything in the weight room and you're going to get better, right? If you're training for hockey, if you start practicing at all, you're going to get better. So the problem is people don't graduate their mindset to being more specific as they get better, you know? So I was reading another book, that conditioning book I mentioned a few episodes ago. I was reading that conditioning book, and it's a common theme that people who are experts in their field will say. It's like, you have to be specific about what you're trying to work on to get a result. And they'll always make mention of this newbie gains thing. It's like, if you're inexperienced, then yeah, you can do anything and you'll get better, but that doesn't mean it's the best way to get better. So the more experience you get, the more you have to be intentional and specific about your training. And that is where the disconnect happens, because it worked when you were younger to just go out and do cones. It worked when you were younger to just sit in your driveway and work on your shot. It worked on all that stuff worked. And then you get more experience, so it doesn't work anymore. It will stop working. You're going to plateau. So how do you break the plateau? You have to increase your intensity, and you have to increase your specificity on what you're doing. So if you increase the intensity, but it's still generic, you're not going to get any better. So it has to be specific to something you want to try to work on, you know? It could be a conditioning thing. If you keep going for 5K runs, you're not going to improve your top end speed. That's not how you do it, right? It might actually help when you're younger, though. If you just do conditioning, your speed might get better just because you need to improve everything, you know? So that is where that happens.
And you're growing and
all those things, right? So that's, as parents too, like, that's the important thing when you're choosing training for your kid. That specificity thing starts to come into play once they're 15, 16, maybe a little bit younger, but around that age, you know? The reverse is also true. When you're 10, it doesn't have to be super specific, because they can be general. They need everything. But as they get older, you have to graduate your mindset. Otherwise, that plateau is going to happen. And we have so many guys that play junior. We were just talking about it before this, where they go to the skate that somebody's putting on that has zero impact on their deficiencies. They're already playing junior. They're already good at everything, basically. Now we need to get specific to fix those things, and if you're at just a generic training session that isn't designed specifically for you, then it's not as beneficial as it should be. So that's just to sharpen up that point that you're making, because it's really, really important that people don't realize that, or they don't remember it, or whatever. So it's important that you keep that in mind as you start to get more advanced in your training.
Yeah. So I was speaking with a scout, okay, and and not everyone does it the exact same way, but I would agree with this. There's basically four pillars of scouting. Okay, so I'm looking as a hockey player. Let's just act like I want to get better as a player, and if you're better, then a scout would say, right, that you're getting looked at. People would want you, like whether you want to call a coach a scout, a manager a scout, whatever. Getting picked to play at a different level is is basically being scouted, right? So I would say that I would agree with this. Hey, Charlie boy, I would agree that there's four basic pillars of scouting, right? One would be, and he put them in this order: hockey sense, compete, skill, and skating.
In order. That is
That's
in
what
order.
it is his order.
Yeah.
Now I know that there's going to be people that say no, it's got to be skating's number one. If you can't skate, can't play. We'll argue that there in a second, but I mean we're not talking about someone on his ankles, right? But in his order, that's the way it is. Argue it all you want. I'm not arguing it. It's like, okay, that's how you see it. That's how you rate a player. That's fine. It actually makes sense to me. Okay, and you always take everything with a grain of salt. So let's just say there's four basic pillars of scouting. Okay, we'll go through it again: hockey sense, compete, skill, skating. All right. As a player, and this is where parents and coaches can actually help, right? You can set a plan and stuff like that. So as a player, you start breaking down, um, what do I need help with, right? So
Like,
maybe you
which
can,
of those four?
which of those, well, like, okay, so if I'm a player, I'd say, like, if I know this information that there's four different things, do I have, so let's go hockey sense. Does it appear like I have hockey sense? Do people say I have hockey sense? Does it seem like I'm around the puck? Does it seem like I'm making plays? Does everything I do die when I'm around it? Like the play, I get the puck, plays died, and I'm back checking, and it's like, or I'm floating around the ice. I'm not sure where I am. Okay, if it's really good, you probably got good hockey sense, putting up points and all that stuff. If you're not in the corner every time you carry the puck, if you are the opposite, you probably need help with your hockey sense. Okay, that's without someone actually evaluating. You should know that or get opinions. There's number one. Compete. Have you heard that? Like, he just doesn't. It seems like you're working hard, or it seems like there's more that you can get. Like, you know what compete is. If someone gives you a shot, do you give them a shot back? I'm not saying retaliate as an idiot. Do you go to hard areas and stuff like that? That's kind of compete. When the game's on the line, are you ready to go? Right? Skill, right? Do you got good hands? Do you make plays? You can make passes. Can you get to the net? Can you tip pucks? Can you figure that part out? Can you shoot a puck well? That's your skill part. If that's lacking, then pick that. And then skating, right? So now within those four different things, obviously there's a whole bunch of skill buckets within those things. But in general, that's what you got to figure out, right? If it's skating, because that's a big word for a lot of things. Is it forward? Is it backwards? Is it blah blah blah, quickness,
Yeah.
speed,
So
power?
start with those four as like a
Right.
framework,
Yeah, that's
and
the
then you could
framework.
work
So
within
so
there.
yeah, so if you can kind of look at that and say I need to work on this, then that's what I'm saying is take the next good chunk of time and say I need to spend time on this to make me a better hockey player. Okay?